telephone diplomacy and map of Ukraine, how Russian TV rewrites reality. The broadcast of the 60 Minutes program of August 19, 2025, was another example of how Russian propaganda tries to present a war in Ukraine as a decision, and European leaders as powerless observers. The main plot is the night telephone conversation of Trump and Putin, filed as the beginning of the end of the war, although in fact we are talking about manipulative interpretation. 1. Trump as a personal peacemaker. The key method of release is the heroization of Donald Trump. The presenters emphasize that for the sake of talking with Putin, he interrupted the meeting with Europeans and Zelensky. The subtext is obvious. The United States allegedly recognize Moscow as the only real partner for dialogue, and Europe and Ukraine have no weight. For the Russian audience, this is a signal. America chooses Russia. For European, this is an attempt to drive a wedge between Washington and Brussels. Second, manipulation with a territorial issue. The most aggressive part of the release is associated with proportional exchange of territories. Propaganda interprets Zelensky's statements as if Ukraine is ready to give what Moscow is already controlled. This is a dangerous narrative. He undermines the Ukrainian position, no concessions without Ukraine, inspires the Western viewer with the idea that Kyiv has already internally surrendered, masks Russian aggression to exchange and compromise. 3. Europe as powerless at the performance. The presenters defiantly emphasize that the Europeans were not invited to a telephone conversation. Macron, Merz, Meloni, Rutte are shown as second-plan actors who are either Chauani, Meloni theatrically rolling his eyes, or depreciate the Merkners are called Chancellor from Germany without a name. The meaning is simple. Europe is not a subject, but a decoration. The fate of Ukraine is decided by Putin and Trump. 4. Historical parallels and rewriting the past. A separate block is dedicated to Finland and the lessons of 1944. The thesis sounds that the USSR gave the Finns of the sovereignty, and today Putin can supposedly show the same generosity. This is dangerous revisionism. Aggression and occupation are presented as an act of mercy. I think President Putin wants to find a solution. Trump continues to talk about the Kremlin being ready for a peace deal, even after the official part of the program ended. Journalists filmed the US president in an informal conversation, explaining this to President Macron and Prime Minister Meloni. I think Putin wants to come to a deal for me. You can interpret this however you want. Maybe it's crazy. Right in the middle of a meeting with European leaders, Trump decides to call Putin. He interrupted the meeting to call Vladimir Putin right in the middle of it, right at the moment when all the heads of state were at the table. And now we are waiting to see if he stepped aside to talk or called Putin right there. Initially, we were told that he would call Putin after the meeting, but he made the call right in the middle of it. And I would not be surprised at all if he turned on speakerphone so that everyone at the table in the East Room could hear it. The White House releases a photo of the phone call. Trump calls the President of Russia from the Oval Office. Nearby are Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Rubio, and a translator. The Europeans were not invited. The Washington Post writes that during the joint photo, there were far fewer smiles than before. Why is it important for Europe, for the European audience? These programs should not read as an internal Russian performance, but as an information attack. The main goal is to convince Western societies that Ukraine is already ready for surrender. The USA and Russia can exchange the war without Europe. Europe is not a subject of negotiations. If these narratives are fixed in Western media and politics, they will weaken the support of Kyiv, create the ground for pressure on Ukraine to accept reality and actually legitimize aggression. By the end of the broadcast, a single picture is built. Trump and Putin, two leaders who can stop the war, Zelensky, weak, illegitimate, and prepared for concessions. Europe is noisy but powerless. Thus, Russian TV inspires negotiations without Ukraine and Europe are the only real way.